Yeah, the Steelers got Russ, so we'll see how Russ
Yeah,
cooks.
Yeah.
I mean,
that
$1.2
is
million for Russ, sure.
that is one of my favorite moves
Steelers
is the
country,
Russell
let's
Wilson thing.
weld.
It's black and gold, let's go, apparently.
That's not too bad. Maybe it's
I
maybe
like
it's
let's go.
my biased Seahawks fan talking in me that remembers the glory days. But if you can get Russell Wilson for literally the veteran minimum, I don't know.
Yeah,
Like
I thought it was a really good
he's gonna be
move.
significantly better than
I
Kenny
think it's a
Pickett.
good move. You look at his stats last year; they're not as bad as what everyone thinks there are. And there always is a narrative that we start collecting towards about a player, and then it gets
Yeah.
dissipated. And here's a narrative that's 100% true. Sean Payton's an asshole, and he didn't want Russ to be the quarterback last year. Never really gave him a fair shot. Always wanted his own guy in there. But you look at Russ. Yeah, Russ lost him some games last year, no doubt. But going in that system now with Tomlin, the weapons that he's going to be able to have, and I know they traded Johnson to the Panthers, but he's got George Pickens. Um, the Steelers are going to draft whoever at wide receiver, and he's going to be the next great receiver because that's what Pittsburgh does. He's got a decent
Yeah.
run game there, an amazing defense. And I think that's the one really good thing from, like you kind of mentioned, Caleb, with those old Legion of Boom teams, he gets to kind of do this with the Steelers now. Let Hayward and Watt do what they do in the rest of that Steelers defense, and you just do you. Not too much pressure in. Just don't blow a game for us.
And I
'Cause I
mean,
thought they could have beat. Was it Buffalo they faced in the playoff game?
Yeah. Yep.
They had no Watt in that game, and I thought they were really close to beating Buffalo in that game. They just needed slightly better quarterback play. That's what Russ gives
and
you.
I think the thing with Russ is you don't have that big contract sitting over you anymore. You're only getting paid $1 million from the team that's you're playing for.
Yeah.
And I mean, you're
It's a
obviously
proven
making
year.
a lot more, but I mean, with Russ on that team, like you mentioned, Josh, I mean, sky's the limits. I mean, we don't know what we're going to see out of him. If we're going to see him return back to even just a fraction of what we saw in Seattle, or if we're going to see the same quarterback from last year, either way, I think it's an upgrade. I think the Russ we saw last year is still levels above Kenny Pickett. So honestly, if I'm a Steelers fan, I'm not worried. I think you've just gone better. Like even if you don't see the same Russ that we've seen in the past, I mean.
And they just added Patrick Queen to that defense with Howard and Fitz, and like it's and JJ and TJ Watt. Like that's a scary defense.
Oh yeah, and I mean it always has been a scary defense. The offense was always their issue. I think my one worry would be because I know Russ's stats last year, like you said, Josh, like they are a lot better than people think.
Yeah.
I do think a lot of that, the issue with that is a lot of that was inflated by the fact that it was garbage time and also lots of short stuff, lots of yards after catch. There's like I don't remember what the stat was exactly, but some sort of crazy stat about what percentage of his throws were 5 yards or less. That is not the Russ I knew in Seattle. You kind of get scared in terms of Arthur Smith being the offensive coordinator. A lot of what he does is stuff over the middle, and that's not something that Russ is very good at. It was never something he was good at. He wasn't good at it in Seattle. He wasn't good at it in Denver. That might be something you have to change. And Arthur Smith is not necessarily known as a person who is good at adapting and changing what he thinks when he probably should. Cough everything in Atlanta and learning how to use the talent that he has. That worries me a little bit. But honestly, like Simon, you made a great point. I think the pressure in Denver was a huge thing. Not only just the contract, but what you brought up too, Josh, in terms of when your coach hates you, like that isn't great either. The pressure of the trade and everything, basically forcing his way out of Seattle. He doesn't have all of that now. Like the expectations are low at this point.
There is one expectation though, because his Hall of Fame bubble has burst. This guy's not a lock for the Hall of Fame anymore. He needs 1-2 more good seasons to be a Hall of Famer.
Yeah. That is the kind of that's I think an interesting conversation. As a Seahawks fan, I think he gets I hope he gets in anyways, even if he doesn't have those 1 or 2 good seasons.
It is close.
Because it is close. And I think people really undervalue just how good he was from about 2016 to 2019. I always Yeah, I always think that that if Lamar didn't have that insane season where he was the unanimous MVP, like Russ would have an MVP because he was so good that season. He just happened to be a quarterback at the same time as Lamar Jackson in that year. I do think he should be there, but I do understand that I have bias having watched him every Sunday for 10 years. So you're probably right in that he does need those extra seasons, but at least it's not something that is as continuously pointed out and is continuously on your mind as the other stuff would have been in Denver, because that was just a pressure cooker waiting to pop.
Yeah, the bring up that Lamar, I was in Seattle for the Monday Night Football game that year when they faced the Vikings, and everyone was just like, because Lamar had that really good game that Sunday, and we were in the bar and people were like, fuck, Russ has to have a good game tomorrow against the Vikings. Like, I think Lamar just got MVP from that game, and Russ had an okay game, but the chatter coming out, they had this great comeback on Monday Night Football against the Vikings to win the game and everything like that. Everyone's like, that was great, but I think Russ lost MVP.
Yeah. Yep. I remember that season really well, because especially with how, because you're right, he kind of lost it on the stretch, but with how he was playing in that first half of the season, I really thought he had it. If we want to kind of transition away from the AFC North, we'll go to the AFC West, and I'll just tee this one up for you, Josh, with your Raiders.